Thanks for joining me today on this episode of My Kids Gain I'm Okay podcast. I have a great guest. I'm so excited. Dr. Bobbie Glass has joined me today. Dr. Bobbie, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody all the wonderful things you've been doing.
Gosh, I hardly know how to respond to something like that because I've just me and I've been living my life. I'm one of those people that have just always known they were trans. I was born in 1950. We didn't have any vocabulary back then for any of this stuff, but I just knew I was a girl, and I knew that, this is not gonna be okay because my environment is trying to tell me, "No, no, no, you're something else," and my brain is like, "No, this is who you are," and so it's been a struggle forever, and I grew up in a little Appalachian coal mining town, and the town to this day has never had more than 4,000 people, so we were pretty isolated, so I'm pretty much left in a vacuum of medicine and psychology and current events for that matter. um, and so just had to develop the ability to hide who I really was because it was uh, I I would get ridiculed and shamed and those kinds of things and redirected to the things that belong to the parts that I seem to have that I didn't really want. But so it's been a real dilemma for me forever to try to make sense out of what was going on. And meantime, but, oh boy, it's hard to know, but I'm have really been fascinated all my life by neurodivergent people and people who are wired differently. And uh, I guess all my credentials and career and everything are in exceptional child education and inside the disability rights movement and those kinds of things. Um, um, I I did my dissertation, for instance, at Apple Computer. This was way back in the 80s and the 90s, and where assistive technology and the tools that were redefining what it means to have a disability were being created. And oh my gosh, I was just really in the right place at the right time. I got started in that field in the late 70s, just as um, well, it was called Public Law 94-142 back then, but it morphed into idea our special education law because up until then, kids with disabilities were housed, warehoused, and educated in these big state facilities, residential facilities like the Kentucky School for the Blind, the Indiana School for the Blind in Indianapolis. I've worked there a bunch of times. I spent my first 12 years just working with kids and adults who were blind and visually impaired, and the technology was starting to come along, and I was saying, "Holy, this is going to make a difference." And so I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And Apple Computer got real interested in the work we were doing here in Louisville at the American Printing House for the Blind. And they came to visit and kind of study what we were doing. We were trying to make talking word processors and things like that. And the next thing I know, I was going to work for them. And so that's also at the time where the civil rights of the country are really undergoing a big change. So I say born in 1950. Oh my God, and that's the part of the civil rights issues. I should have started kindergarten with kids of color in 1954 when Brown versus the Board of Education was passed. And then there were all of these other things that were going on. And then the late 70s, parents of kids with disabilities were going, wait a minute, if separate schools are inherently unequal for kids of color, then they should be for kids of just different abilities with disabilities. And so I was just right in on all of that stuff of changing from that institutional warehousing kind of model, medical model for treating people with disabilities to just, no, we're going to live in the community like regular human beings that go to the schools in their neighborhood and all of that. And so I just really, working at Apple and being close to San Francisco and those crazy, oh, Oh, the warriors in the disability community then that started the Section 504 and Rehabilitation Act of '73 and all of that stuff, and I've just had a very privileged education in terms of working with marginalized people and also being on right in the right place where the civil rights and legislation and policy is being developed and medical capacity, mental health capacity, and infrastructure. All of that stuff is coming into place. And it just has been a real joy. And I've just got a knack for being in the right place at the right time. And so I'm starting my 50th year of working with neurodivergent people, and that's kids of all abilities, all ages, cradle to the grave, and all of that stuff. I'm a professor. I've been doing that for oh over 25, yeah, 25 years or so. Um, and I train teachers and um, I'm a special resource teacher with the Jefferson County. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was special resource teacher there for them, and I was I taught the kids that were hospitalized in psychiatric residential treatment facilities. And we have those all over the country. In Louisville, it's places like Our Lady of Peace, Maryhurst, Brooklawn, Home of the Innocent, St. Joseph's Orphanage, on and on. Um, Audubon Day Treatment, uh, and they're all full of children who have been labeled unfit to attend a public school. And there's all kinds of conditions that make a child unfit to attend a public school and things that wouldn't surprise you. For instance, uh, they've they may be 13, 14 years old, but they've already been convicted of rape or murder, armed robbery, things like that. So there's a lot of reasons why there is a category of kids that are unfit to attend a public school. One of those categories is our children that attempt suicide and are persistent self-harmers. Um, a public school is not set up to monitor a kid that is actively trying to kill themselves. And uh, you just would not believe all of those. We have 13 of those residential psychiatric facilities, hospitals here in Jefferson County, and every one of them has a waiting list of 200, 300 people. It really breaks your heart to see how many kids are living in distress or they're wards of the state. They've been removed from their homes because of the atrocities that their parents are guilty of. And you just would not believe the incomprehensible things that happen to children that drive them into these facilities. And so that has been a really privileged part of my education to to work with that huge assortment of children, but the number of kids over the last 8 or 9 years that had been coming in for attempted suicide because they were queer and because they're being relentlessly bullied at school. Most of them have no support at home. They're being disowned or they're being thrown out of the house. They're living with a neighbor down the street or something. I mean, they're just all over the place. But for some reason, they just decide there's really no hope for them in this life. And why prolong this? And and they just don't want to live anymore. And so my classrooms were filling up with kids like that. And then in the summer of 2022, our state senator, Karen Berg, had a transgender son that came into one of our facilities when he was 14 years old for attempted suicide. And she won't mind me telling this because her story's all over the New York Times and just all over the country right now. But she grabbed me and she said, all of that hateful stuff that's been filed in Florida and Texas, they've cloned it and pre-filed it in Frankfurt. They're going to pass all of that stuff they've already done in Florida and Texas. They're going to do that here, and we're outnumbered, and I need some help. And I knew exactly what that was going to mean, putting bans on gender affirming care, don't say gay, banning books. I knew what that was going to do to the number of kids that are already trying to kill themselves. And it's like, this is just going to make everything 10 times worse. And it's like, that's when I started looking into early retirement from the Jefferson County schools so I could become a political activist because we have worked too hard for too long to make the Louisville region a place where trans kids could thrive, not only survive, but they could thrive here. They were well accepted at school, fully included. The medical profession, the hospitals, the mental health profession, everybody was in. We had built a fabulous city for people to have children who are transgender, non-binary, to be that. And all of a sudden we have these yahoos that are jumping on this Florida, Texas bandwagon of Christian nationalism, hate. And it's like, let's just eliminate all of that. Let's just shut it down. We don't have, they're practicing medicine without a license, and it's infuriating. And so I had to join. I mean, it's like, who's gonna fight this? And I had to admit that there was probably not that many people that would be better at it than I am. And so I had to become very political very fast and work my way into those hearings and to testify. And I also got working with banning conversion therapy in our state. That was another thing that I'm really big on. And I know we're going to talk more about that, but we had gotten conversion therapy banned. Therapists could not practice that in Louisville, Lexington, and Covington. We had gotten that banned in those three urban areas, and we were trying to get it banned statewide. And so that's been another drama going on. uh, but I'm there are things that our government is doing that are harming, viciously harming, hurting whole families, turning whole families into political refugees. Kids are kids are hurting themselves, and a lot of them aren't surviving. I've been to their funerals. And I mentioned Senator Berg and her son Henry coming in when he was in middle school. And Henry was one of our success stories. Had really got it all together, had gotten really confident, proud, went ahead and finished high school, got accepted at Georgetown University in Washington, enrolled and graduated from Georgetown, had done really well and got a job with the Human Rights Campaign as the deputy communications director. And that was like, holy smoke, Henry's one of our big success stories. And here's mom wanting me to partner with her in the state legislature to just be the voice of opposition to all of this stuff. And then 2 weeks before the session starts in December of 2022, Henry just couldn't take it anymore. He's getting very credible death threats with his job at the Human Rights Campaign, and he took his life right around Christmas in 2022. And the session was going to start the first week in January. And so here's Senator Berg, and it's like she doesn't even have time to grieve the death of her son. And we've got to show up in front of these yahoos that just want to portray all of us as just, these filthy vermin that deserve to die, and we can't support them in any way. And I'm just furious with it. So that's a long story about how I got.
No.
Yeah,
Well, and the things you're talking about is their argument that, "See, they're mentally ill. See, they're mentally ill." And
right.
and I don't know how to I can't make this sound nice, you know?
Yeah,
So, excuse me, and I just went up against my local school board. The school board
yeah,
was in favor, but we had a pride, club.
yeah,
5 kids. And so the town showed up, 2 churches organized to get it shut down, and in order to shut down that club, they had to shut down all the clubs.
yeah,
And grown people were standing up saying, "These kids needs counseling, these kids
yeah.
need this." And they were quoting the high suicide rate. Well, I went in, quote, "Yes, these numbers are right, but we take it down to 7%, which is the normal rate." To me, there's no normal to suicide. But if you are accepting and supportive, that takes that 40 and 50% rate down to normal levels.
Mhm.
So the
Well,
very
let
thing
me interrupt you because that infuriates me.
Mhm.
And religious people that use that mentally ill argument, they are revealing their ignorance to the max. Now, I want to give you some examples from the New Testament where it talks about Jesus was healing people and they called them demoniacs and they were having seizure disorders and they're calling them demon possessed and they're wanting to kill them and execute them. They have seizure disorders. And we didn't when I talk about neurodiversity, now those same Christian people, they're not going to have any problem if somebody has Down syndrome, if they're born with spina bifida, if they have autism, if they have seizure disorders, if they're colorblind, if they're left-handed, if they have these incredible athletic abilities. Nobody has any problem with that kind of neurodiversity. But when you start saying that there is one and only one way for a person's sense of self and identity and gender affinity. There is only one and one way for that to develop, and it has to match your genitals and what you were assigned at birth. It's like somebody glances at a baby for 3 seconds and then prescribes the rest of their life with a 3 second examination. And it's like, that is crazy. And what I need to tell people, what Christians have to understand, they want everything to be so simple. They want it to be black and white, but the Bible never, never, never says that you're either all male or all female. It never says that. In Genesis, it talks about let's make man in our own image, male and female. It doesn't say male or female. It never says male or female, any place, male and female. Everybody is both male and female. And if you would just understand human development is like every embryo begins as a female embryo. And there's nothing about Y chromosomes or SRY genes that are attached to any of those chromosomes. Nothing about that kicks in until the 6 or 8 week of gestation. Now, this is what I need people in the Christian community to understand. Everybody begins life as a female embryo, and that is precisely why men have nipples. And if you have any doubt that you were created male and female, just look down your shirt, for heaven's sakes. And for somebody to suggest that out of the 8 billion people living on this planet, that there's no way possible anything with gametes or chromosomes or genes or SRY genes or any of that in vitro environment, that there's nothing that could come in and complicate any of that stuff. The toxins in our environments, for anybody to be that stupid to say there is no way in this grand world of diversity that God created that anybody could be wired any differently than I am. I mean, my brain matches my genitals, and that's the way everybody in the world is. And I hate to break it to you, no, it is not. And if you think someone would choose to be transgender, that shows how ignorant you really are. There is no way in this world I would ever choose to be transgender. You will never meet anybody that chose to be transgender. Being transgender chooses us. And what I've got to do is figure out how to play the cards I'm dealt the best I can. And I don't need a bunch of religious bigots saying, oh, no, you're either all this or you're all that, or you're going to hell if you don't play by my rules. And it's like, your rules are stupid. Your rules don't have any basis in biology. And here you are, you have no problem accepting that some children are born with Down syndrome or autism or ADHD or cortical blindness or spina bifida. It just goes on and on. Learning disabilities. The Christian community has no problem with that kind of diversity. But boy, you start messing with the role of women and the prescribed role of men. Now that's where we're going to have some fight. And it just makes me sick because they are hurting real people and real families because they just cannot believe that somebody's brain does not match what's between their legs. And it just, that has got to stop. It really has to stop. And I if anybody, that's the number one myth in this world, that people believe that being transgender is a choice or being homosexual is a choice. It's like, forget that. You have not even thought about this if you think somebody would choose to be trans, you know.
Well, and 100% of the people that I have talked to in the LGBT plus community have said, "I would never choose to be ostracized from society."
Yeah.
They said that. It's you're not making something up, 100%. And I've had them say, "I tried to pray the gay away. I tried so hard to
Uh,
be who they wanted me to be." So, you're absolutely 100% right. And
uh,
people are choosing to be bigots. I don't wanna say they're choosing ignorance, they are choosing to be bigots at this point in time, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they are on this matter, and you see it so clearly when you're in these legislative hearings and you've got these people, and I don't mean to demean them. They're just ordinary people from their communities. They have farms, they have small businesses, they may be involved in sales. Some point they decided to run for the General Assembly. And in 39 of our count districts in Kentucky, Republicans ran unopposed. There was nobody else on the ticket. So if you could just say, "Oh, shoot, I want to run as a Republican," you're going to get elected. And so we've got 39 districts where there was nobody else. And now for these people to come in and act like they've got a medical license or a mental health license and they know what's best for the entire population. We have a parade of medical people and mental health people and social worker people, people from national. We have this long parade of experts, and well, I don't like it. I don't like it. And so I'm going to vote to get rid of it. And that's the kind of ignorance that we have in our state, and it is driving people away. It is hurting people. It is making us look really stupid and backwards in the eyes of the world. And it's just ignorance and people that are choosing to remain ignorant
Yeah.
about it. And
Well, I live in Indiana, so I'm right there with you.
oh, I know. Yeah.
I worked for 5 years as a marketing director for a nursing home that
Uh-huh.
had a secure memory unit. So the number one thing they always told us was, if somebody comes up and thinks they're going to high school today, they're going to high school today. You don't correct them, that's their reality. So when they're talking about the trans people and they're talking about the gays and the lesbians and they decide that they're mentally ill, they go against all medical training of
Right.
they'll say stuff like, "I'm not gonna participate in your mental illness."
Right.
But every place else other than that, they're saying this causes them distress, you go along with them. So to me, that already negates the argument of mental illness.
Right. Well, let me give you the perfect example. This is what's really going on with the people that claim mental illness. And I want them to listen very carefully to this. Now, you see somebody like me in a restaurant, or you hear that I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, I'm a public, all the, and so they start thinking, what would have to be wrong with me in order for me to act like that? What would have to be wrong with me in order for me to be assigned male at birth, but want to be on a girls' volleyball team? What would have to be wrong with me in order for me to do that? And that's when people start saying, well, say the bathroom things. "Oh, well, I'd really have to be a pervert. And I'd really be wanting to get in there so I could look into stalls and stuff like that." And so they project the deepest, darkest parts of themselves onto me. And it's like, what in the world do you think I'm doing when I go to the bathroom?
Right.
What in this world? And they're projecting all of this creepiness on me that's in their hearts. They're saying, well, if I was going to dress up and go into a women's bathroom, this was have to be what's wrong with me. And so I'd have to be mentally ill. And so that's what they assume about themselves. They cannot imagine that somebody is just not wired that way. It's like, no, this is who I am. There's not a doubt in my mind. I have done, there's not a person in this world that has done as much as I have done to turn it off and make it go away. And it can't be done. And I would put that claim up against anybody that tries to insult me with this is a choice, because there is no choice to it whatsoever. And I get so angry about this because people are being so mean and they're hurting so many people. And when they do stuff like Elon Musk, the first week in office, they shut down the 988 suicide and crisis line for queer
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yep.
They don't care. And they have no idea how busy that number is. I'll tell you how busy that number is. When you call 988 anywhere in this country, you call 988 and you get a voice prompt. It says, if you're active military or a veteran, or the friend or family member of active military or a veteran, press one. If you're LGBTQ plus, or the friend or family member of someone who's LGBTQ plus, press two. Everybody else press three. So that right there nationally, that's who's calling those crisis lines. And to just eliminate the second highest group calling them, that is just cruelty beyond belief. And the message there is we don't want to think about it. Maybe if there are few of, let them die. I work for the Trevor Project too. I make videos for the Trevor Project right now. I've got like 12 up there now on the Trevor Project site about conversion therapy and the dangers of that. I'm a cast member, and they're sharing space episodes on mental health. And I'm just furious that what has happened, and it is so brilliant with the Heritage Foundation and the dark money. They fabricate. All right, let's just say let's have a bathroom ban. Let me find. I'm going to find me somebody in the state senate. I'm going to offer them $25,000 to push a bathroom ban. And I've already got the bill written for me. The Heritage Foundation, they clone all that stuff from Florida, Texas. They're cloning it and passing it out all over to these state legislatures. Let me find somebody to file that bill, and I'll make a big contribution. Now, what they have done when they file, that becomes news, clicks, all this stuff. Oh, so and so has filed the bill, and everybody starts panicking, and it starts getting in the news, and all of the moving parts between when somebody files something and it becomes law. Oh my gosh. You would not believe how many moving parts there are in there where you have to intercept stuff to make sure it doesn't happen. But what I'm saying is, when somebody files that bill, all of a sudden that occupies an enormous amount of time. The news starts covering it. People start reading about it. People are talking about it. It's got to go through all of these committees, get hearings. They have to announce when the hearings are going to, you have to invite the public in for commentary. They're going to have all this stuff. Then you're going to send it to the floor, and maybe one chamber will pass it. The other chamber might not be excited about it. What I'm saying is somebody paid a representative like 25, 30. Let's just introduce a bathroom bill. And now all of a sudden, the whole political machinery of a state is focused on a bathroom bill. And we're not talking about the 200,000 people that are going to lose their Medicaid benefits, that the extensions to the Affordable Care Act haven't been extended. We're not going to be talking about anything that's going to look like asking billionaires to pay a little bit more. And so that is what is the awful thing about what's happened with all this anti-trans hysteria and everything. You have the billionaire class, and I cannot make that any more clear. If you look at where these bills are originating, who is filing them, where the dark money is behind them, who is pushing this agenda in state legislatures, all it's the billionaire Epstein class, because they are trying to divert the public's attention from the real problems and the real solutions and get us focused on hating this stupid stuff. And I got news for people about bathroom bills. As long as you have been alive, and as long as you have been using public restrooms, you have been using them with transgender and non binary people, and not one thing has ever happened to you in your whole life. And now all of a sudden you get all of this hoopla like, oh, here's this great solution in search of a problem. We've got to make, and I hate what's happening because it's hurting real people. I've been to their funerals. I have them in my classrooms. I see them cutting themselves. I see they're they're full of scars. I know their parents. This is People do not realize that this hateful junk that they do on all the talk shows, Matt Walsh and all this stuff, they don't realize that stuff is really harming real children, real people. The hate is tangible and it's all manufactured, socially engineered stuff to keep our eyes off of the real problem. And that is, where is the revenue to take care of the serious problems facing our state right now? We've got something like 35 rural hospitals that are not going to be able to function. They're going to close. And when a hospital is typically one of the major employers in these counties, they close, that has a ripple effect. All the people that own homes can't pay their bills, can't buy groceries, can't buy gas, support the small businesses in that town. All of a sudden, you're going to have to start driving 50, 100 miles farther to see a doctor. There are real problems facing our state. Where I go to the bathroom is not one of them. I'll give you another, the trans athlete bill.
Yeah.
We
We
had one kid in the whole state. This was a kid in the 7th grade at Westport Middle School that loved field hockey, wanted to play field hockey with her friends. Why don't we try to organize a team? They'd never had a field hockey team at Westport Middle. Okay, well, let's do it. And they didn't have uniforms, they didn't have a schedule. But they started organizing and practicing and playing, and they found some schools to play in the first year. It was like, actually, they got to have a few meets the second year. Then why don't we have a fundraiser and get some uniforms and try to schedule some more games? And so there's one kid, one trans kid, just talked all of her friends into starting a field hockey team, and they had just bought uniforms and started scheduling games. One kid. And then the legislature makes you think there's boys all over the state trying to get into the locker room to take a peek at your little daughter. That hysteria and that meanness and that cruelty is
well, and nationwide, in high
just,
school, I think there's like 12 trans athletes.
the
12.
NCAA said there was less than 10. There's
Yeah.
500,000, over 500,000 college athletes. Maybe less than 10 of them are trans.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about, what kind of problem is that really when it's compared to all of I mean, I've had people calling me in shock. They go to pick up their meds and they're $2,000. Their prescriptions are
Mhm.
$2,000 this month. I may be able to help them figure out where to find $2,000 this month, but what about next month and the month after, and their house payment and their car payment and their child care and their groceries?
The
And
electric bill, the
yeah,
the
exactly. And what I'm saying, all of this is manufactured culture wars.
yeah.
And so I am really busy about trying to turn that tide around because see, I watched it happening and it just started leaking out in North Carolina 4 years ago. North Carolina was the first state to try a bathroom ban, and that came back and bit them badly. It really had some serious, significant negative consequences. But what the Heritage Foundation, oh, this is a red meat issue. We can create a lot of anger and rage and get people to click. And that's exactly what this is. It's all clickbait. And that's what they discovered is, let's talk about trans stuff like it's a menace, like it's a threat, and people will click on it. And that's the world we've created. And it just breaks my heart because kids are suffering mightily. Families are suffering mightily. Uh, well, just your own experience, just trying to advocate for your own child and what you're discovering about the world you live in.
Yeah.
Because what your child thinks is more important than what the neighbors think, you know?
Well, and I had reviewed the notes from the, school board meeting with my daughter,
Mhm,
and she said, "I want you to use the term surviving LGBTQ plus adult." She goes, "'Cause I survived this town." And I
mhm.
was like, "Holy cow." And she said, "I got the message every day." at school and at church and in the town where I belonged. Just
Right.
like I was 8 years old, I knew who I was, and I was afraid to let anybody know that.
Mhm.
And when you
You
stop
develop a double personality. Here's the person I want them to see, and this is the person I really am.
Yeah, and I think I watched The Birdcage with Robin
Mm.
Williams and Nathan Lane. I watch it, like, once a year, and this year, for some reason, I'm laying in bed and I'm watching it, and Nathan Lane, when his wig comes off and he's looking at Gene Hackman and, Gene's, like, shocked, and he looks at him and I've watched the movie. I saw it in a dinner theater back in the '80s, you
Uh-huh.
know? Yeah. So I've been a fan of The Birdcage for quite some time, but this time when he looked at Gene Hackman, he goes, "I'm still the same person." 'Cause 2 minutes earlier, Gene Hackman's trying to protect this woman.
Uh-huh.
You know, she he it that her husband's a brute
Yeah.
and running over her, and she just this, she should be protected from him. And then when the wig comes off and he says, "Well, I am a man," and Gene's, like, shocked, and Nathan looks at him and says, "I'm still the same person I was just 2 minutes ago. What's
Yeah.
wrong? What's you tell me what's changed." And he couldn't put into words what he was thinking. And
Uh-huh.
it just hit me because I was like, "How many times has somebody really experienced that? You liked me until you knew this about me.
Mhm.
Tell me what's really changed." It just yeah, it blows my mind.
Yeah, it really has, and, I know that, you wanted to talk some about conversion therapy, and I didn't know if this is a good time to
We'll get there.
okay. No, I just wanted to watch your
No, we're good. We're good. You don't worry about that. I'll have an idea of where we're gonna go,
Okay.
but I also believe in it being about as organic and real as possible.
Well, thank you because I I I really don't know any other way to talk. I mean, I can work up PowerPoint slides and a script and all that, but I didn't for today.
Well, people wanna hear the stories. They want to connect, and I think that you bring in some really valuable points to this today. And I mean, you're talking, I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't even think about that." I mean, there's just so much that we need to do as a society. 2/3 of Americans say, "I don't have any problems with LGBTQ plus
Right.
and
It's
trans."
closer to 85% actually.
Yeah. So the majority doesn't, but the majority doesn't speak up. So that's the whole reason why we're doing these podcasts
Right.
and stuff. That's the whole reason why I go out and speak and I write books and all of that. I
Well,
want to
thank you,
build it.
because you're exactly right. This is very intentional. And I want to
Yep.
remind everybody that all of our legacy media is owned by the billionaire class.
Mhm.
And they have an entirely different agenda and goal for humanity than we have for our families and our lives. And so that tiny 15, 20% of haters and bigots, they are the ones getting the microphone right now.
Right.
They're the ones that are getting the clickbait and all of this socially engineered, hateful stuff just spewed out there. They're not most of us, and that's really one of the hardest jobs I've got right now is the people in my community are distraught. They are severely depressed. They're exhausted. They're at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. They don't feel safe going outside
Mhm.
because they're consumed with that 20% that's got this hateful microphone. And what I want to try to tell them is, oh my God, there's this 85% of the world that's going to love you. I am having a great life. I am thriving. I am thoroughly enjoying my life. I'm excited about the stuff that I'm in. I am really proud of who I am, but I'm a rarity right now. Most of my people are really suffering right now and they don't know
Absolutely.
what to do next. And that's why I come on and do these shows. It's like, no, 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 you are immersed in abundance. And I would like to help you just notice it. And
Well, and I tell parents because when I go out and speak, the first thing I lead with is, and it always surprises the LGBTQ plus community, how much pressure is put on parents to disown their kids across the
yeah.
board, from
Oh,
families,
yeah.
friends, and churches. I mean, just right within that
That
order.
that is a key principle of conversion therapy when we
Yeah.
get
And so, That
Tough
is the
love.
yeah, and that's the number one thing that I lead with, and it always surprises, like, they're like and I go, "I lost friends because I stood with my daughter." And I had a parent come up to me last summer saying, "Will my friend come back?" And I said, "You won't want them back. You just won't.
That's
You're on
what
your own journey, and
exactly.
you will not want them in your life." You know, you'll treat them with respect, but you're just not gonna want them in your life. You're on your own coming out journey as well.
Right. Maya Angelou, says, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time."
Yep, yep,
And that's one of the things that paralyzes so many of us in the LGBTQ plus community is the friends that we're going to lose when we come out. And you discover something very quickly. First is you're not going to lose nearly as many as you thought. The ones you will be disappointed by some that you lose, but the ones that want to become even more endeared, even closer, that are happier for you, that are motivated, want to enjoy that is a gift, that is a privilege when you discover the people who really do want to be your friends. That, I mean, you're right, those other people, it's like, no, you showed me who you are, and you just couldn't go where I'm going now, so you keep going where you're going.
mhm,
You can't come where I'm going right now.
right, right,
And
and like I said, the parents come out in their own way and in their own journey. It took me a good 15 years to where I became more vocal and
mm,
spoke out.
yeah.
And then I self-published the book, My Kid's Gay and I'm Okay. Sent it to my daughter for her approval. She approved. She illustrated her own story. And I'll have a copy for you in Owensboro when I see you next month.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So,
And,
I mean,
yeah.
your kid that is gay
Yep.
is also trans?
No, she's not trans. She's a
Okay.
lesbian.
Okay,
But
alright,
yeah,
okay. Alright, I just yeah,
I've got
thank
2.
you.
I've got a son and a daughter, and I said that my son's vanilla. So,
Garden variety.
yep. Yep. But, I've had, people say, "Oh, I turned my daughter gay. I allowed her to be gay."
Ah,
I had a friend that made the comment to me, because he said something about his daughter, and I said, "She could be part of the LGBTQ plus family." And without missing a beat, the guy looks at me and goes, "Oh, no, I raised my kid better than to make those choices."
ooh.
And
Well, that's
yeah,
an
I know.
illusion, that's an illusion.
Yeah,
He's
and
gonna
so
he's
then I looked at him, and he's a chaplain, and I said,
mhm,
"What the F do you think I did? Put my kid in a lesbian boot camp until she conformed?"
mhm,
It is who God created. You believe there's a God and He creates all of us. He created her exactly the way He wanted her.
yeah.
So, yeah. So,
Well, and while we're there, we can bomb this. I've worked a whole lot with documentary filmmakers over the last few years, and
I
there's
love 1946. I use
okay,
that as a
all right,
reference
well,
all the
good.
time with parents, like, "Watch this."
Yeah, well, I was just really, really privileged to be in the right place at the right time when Rocky was just thinking about making that movie, and she'd identified some people and a plot and a storyline. And it was like, "Oh my god, I'm in love with you."
Uh-huh.
I wanted to be a part of that from the beginning, and, it took years. It took years to get from that stage to where it is now, and people can rent that on Amazon and Apple TV, and, um, uh, it's also you can go to their website and stream it um, from there too. And then there was another documentary that I worked on the same time called Conversion. It's got a 2024 date. When you look on Amazon or Apple TV for Conversion, you want the one that says 2024. And it's all about conversion therapy and exposing that for the racket that it is and the harm that it did and the people who profited off of that admitting that they knew of the harm. I mean, it's a real tell-all kind of movie on that world. And so those are 2 things that I had to be a part of because I'm an educator, and videos can do a whole lot in a short amount of time, and leave a long lasting impression. And 1946 is one of those movies that, for the people that haven't seen it, uh, the producer Rocky Roggio is a key figure in it, and her dad is a hardline conservative church Christian minister, is immovable in his position. And Saul, and I've got to know Saul pretty well. And the book I'm writing right now is for Saul, and because I I wanted to become the parent to his daughter that you are, and this and to quit carrying that hate that has no basis in faith. It really doesn't.
Yep.
And so I wanted to mention those things because there are some good tools out there, and you're right when you talk about our attitudes toward gender and sexual preference. There's so much of what we carry is inherited. We don't even know why we believe most of the stuff we believe it. We don't know where we first heard it or first learned it or how we learned it, because hate is learned as easily as language is learned. And so you just don't know whether it was grandma or your Uncle Freddie or the brother so and so who came to spend the summer at church. Well, you just don't know where you hear this stuff, but it becomes a part of your thinking and your beliefs and your values, and you're carrying stuff that you never really consciously chose to carry, and hate and bigotry and prejudice, white supremacy. Oh my gosh, that's what got me started. It's like, how did white supremacy ever become a thing?
Mhm.
That is something that has I have really had to wrestle with, and that's a great example of something that's engineered and inherited. And the people that believe that white supremacists don't really know where they learned it. It just was always there. They inherited that stuff, and they've never really examined it because it's just always been there.
Well, and they always are like, "I'm anointed by God," and it's like, "I don't think you are, though."
Have you talked to God about that?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
convey
yeah,
all that.
would you mind about listening in on that conversation?
And it's like Jesus. One of my friends, she said, "Let's pray to Jesus." I said, "Which one, the brown one or the white one?" And I'm like, "I think that's the funniest thing I've ever said." And she's just looking at me like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Never mind. Never mind."
That is a great example. There's a great book out now. Robert Jones wrote it, The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy. I'm surprised I don't have it right here handy.
I'm reading a book, The Separation of Church and Hate.
Yeah, yeah, Don
Yep,
Fugelsang, or however he says his last name.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So,
That's the book I wanted to write, but I pitched it because, that's preaching to the choir, and I didn't wanna write another preaching to the choir
mhm,
book.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about eh, I was talking to my daughter, and I know hormone therapy. I thought I knew conversion therapy, and I thought I knew, gender affirming care.
Mhm,
And I feel like I'm better educated than most out,
mhm, yeah,
but then I found out I had it all wrong.
mhm,
So, I know hormone therapy because I took hormones after my hysterectomy, and then I took hormones after my part of my cancer treatment for 7 years.
mhm.
So, to me, that was hormone therapy.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's huge, especially if you're dealing with breast cancer or something
Yep.
like that.
Yep, Remedex, 5 years. So, did that, and, I thought conversion therapy and gender affirming care were one and the same, and they're not, I found out, and then I went online and read Chiles versus Salvarez, the
Well,
Supreme Court.
child versus
Yeah,
Salazar, yeah. This
and
yeah,
I was like, "Holy cow, how can this even be considered legal?"
mhm,
Conversion therapy, and that someone would argue that it's their right to free speech,
mhm,
be able to offer it.
yeah.
And, we've got so many studies just on, like, domestic violence and verbal abuse and because that's what made me think when I read it. I was like, "We've got all this information even on verbal abuse and domestic violence situations that's as detrimental as a physical assault." So
Mhm,
how can this conversion therapy, and especially when you as a therapist take the oath of do no harm.
mhm.
So please tell people what conversion therapy entails.
Well, let me start at the beginning, the gender affirming care part.
Okay.
Say I'm 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, and I know I'm female, uh, and I'm talking to my parents about it. It's like I am I see what the male role and expectation look. I am not that. I will be very unhappy. I cannot live that life. I'll be happy if I live true to who I am, which is female. So a kid will start talking about that. And I mean, I talk to a lot of parents, they'll hear their babies start talking like this around 3 or 4 years old. And they've, the smart parents will just listen. They're going to listen and they're going to start trying to educate themselves and inform themselves. But when it becomes a pattern where this goes on 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and you're starting to think there's something going on. Now for me, I knew I was a girl, but then puberty starts happening. Now, that was traumatic, and I want you to think about what little boys go through when they hit puberty. All of a sudden, they start getting facial hair, body hair, they start getting an Adam's apple. Their facial features start changing, their brow bones, their hands get fully grown, their feet get fully grown. They're probably going to, by the time they're 18, they're probably going to be their full adult height. Now that is terrifying if you believe you're a girl and all of a sudden you've got an Adam's apple and you've got facial hair. So puberty blockers are the safest, best medicine, some of the best medicine. It's ancient. I mean, we've known about this stuff for over 100 years. People have been doing it for precocious puberty, like for little girls that start having their periods in the second and third grade have been getting some hormone treatment. Little boys that weren't growing fast enough, and the family's worried about them. They're going to be a runt, and they want them to start growing. And so the manipulating hormones and the puberty blockers and all that stuff has been around for a very long time. It's all reversible. But see, if I had had the luxury of starting puberty blockers when I was around 10 or 11, then then all of that stuff with my hands and feet and nose and abs, apple and facial hair, all that stuff doesn't happen. And I get to maintain those until I'm like 18 and I can decide for myself which direction I want to go. Nearly everybody is happy with the direction they're going and they want to maintain it after they're 18. The regret rate for gender affirming care at all is 2%. 2%. That is some of the best medicine there is. It's reversible. Nobody is getting surgery. People do not. You're out of your ever loving mind if you think a licensed medical practitioner is going to operate on somebody's genitals when they're 7 years old. That just does not happen. You have not a clue what's involved in navigating the medical community if you're just looking for puberty blockers. And to give you some context, most surgeries have a 1 in 7 regret rate. Shoulder replacement, knee replacement, hip replacement, LASIK surgery, heart bypass, spinal surgery, all of those things can have 20% regret rates. 1 out of 7, 15%. Nobody talks about banning knee replacements. They have a horrible, horrible regret rate. And here we've got 2%. 2 out of 100 people say, maybe I shouldn't have tried this to transition my body. 98% of the people are tickled to death that they did it when they did. So gender affirming care is a way of delaying puberty and allowing the individual to decide which puberty they want to follow. And and this is very real because when I talk about kids attempting suicide, I've got their suicide notes, and they are gut wrenching. You will never be the same after you read some of these suicide notes. But that's the harm. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in my 20s and I'm going to look like a man in a dress. I'm going to have all this facial hair and yada yada yada. I'm going to be at Amazon and it's nobody loves me right now. They're sure not going to love me when I'm 21. Why prolong this? And you've got to remember how teenagers think. That is more than they can bear. And so many of them, they just, I'd rather not live another day. And so that's what's going on. So that's what's so sensitive about gender affirming care. And the parents I mean, I've got stories of kids, 4-year-old kids standing out in the street trying to get run over because they don't want to have to live as a boy if they know they're a girl.
Mhm.
And they're trying to kill themselves at 4 and 5 years old. And this is true. This is real. This is how real. And for people to say, "Oh, it's just a mental illness," or no, this is how they are wired. They know who they are. And don't you dare think you know them better than they know themselves. And it's a real medical condition. And you need people. I tell people if what's between your ears is aligned with what's between your legs, that's wonderful. I'm so glad all of that is in perfect harmony. You are grateful for who you are. You're proud of, you're happy. Thank God that you don't have to deal with hating to have these body parts and being expected to perform. It's performing compulsory masculinity. You've got to perform, and people cannot believe that there's an aspect to life that feels anything like that. Yeah, no, and kids say, "I cannot do that. I will not do it. I am not," because that's just to make you happy, and it's to make me miserable. And so the gender affirming care is just medicine, and it mostly has to do with slowing down puberty and letting the individual determine where they want to go with it. Now, transition and hormone therapy are medical interventions, and not everybody who's transgender or non-binary is going to want to medically transition. Not everyone is going to want to take hormone therapy because there are risks to that. Uh, there are some changes that become irreversible after a while. Like you can only do so much of that before you become chemically castrated. And so that's kind of irreversible. And so if you're somebody who wants to have children, you're going to have to think about banking sperm or eggs, or you're going to have to think about it because if you begin hormone therapy, there will be points of no return. And those are welcome because uh, what I've been trying to do with my body is if I had my body had just been allowed to develop normally with female hormones, what would I look like and act like and think like and all that stuff? And I'm not trying to do anything really radical or all that stuff. And I've had a bunch of surgeries and all of that kind of stuff, bunches of surgeries, bunches of medical interventions and all of that stuff. Not everybody chooses to go that way, and that's all right, uh, because there are risks and there are rewards, and it was right for me. But that that hormone therapy is incredibly medically supervised. You first of all, I can't just call up my primary care and say, "Hey, could you write me a prescription for injectable estrogen and progesterone? I'd like to pick it up this afternoon. Can you get on it right away?" No, it doesn't happen. You have to be you have to go through all of these psychological screenings and like have a licensed psychiatrist spend at least like the clinical psychs, whatever you hear about somebody going, they're on trial for something and the lawyer wants to have them psychologically evaluated. That level of scrutiny by a mental health professional, that's the kind of thing that people that want to enter into hormone therapy and medical treatments and medical, they have to go through that level of evaluation and assessment. And twice. I mean, I have to have two separate psychological psychiatrists clinical psychiatrists come back with the same finding. And then I've also got to have all of these other things like I have to have my name changed. I have to be living in the role. I mean, I already have to be living and working and earning my income as a woman before I can do all of this stuff. And so there's a whole lot of social transition and things that go along with that too. And so transition looks more like uh, what an individual wants to do to move from this role they were assigned at birth into the role that matches who they really are, who they are. And so that's what transition is all about. Conversion therapy is totally outside of that. Conversion therapy is when your parents say, "Oh, no, 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 this will not happen in our world. You are not allowed to do that. We have to change you into somebody else. You cannot be a transgender person. You cannot be a gay man. We want to convert you into a heteronormative individual that follows what the Bible says about sex and gender and male roles and husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends. We want you to be that person." So conversion therapy is truly replacing someone's identity with an identity that's more easy for them to handle and manage. And it is identity replacement. You are not allowed to be this gay person. You are not allowed, you cannot exist in my world. And so that is trauma on top of trauma, especially when it's your child. It's like you are unacceptable. I will not love you. Not even God loves you. Do you understand how despicable and abominable you are? It is impossible for you to be loved. You have to change it. So that's what conversion therapy is attempting to do. And it's nothing like those 102 things. It's torture, it's horrible. It is medieval. It is whatever denomination a family belongs to. It is the equivalent of an exorcism in that denomination. They will bring the full might of all the ritual hocus pocus torture they can think of to bear to get you to stop being this person and start being somebody else. And so that's what's so dangerous about it. And I had to spend a huge chunk of my life into that. I'm married into a cultish, ultra conservative Christian family. And, and it was, oh no, there's this strict rule. And I don't know how much detail to get into with all of that experience. But the thing about, first of all, conversion therapy is it's not a licensed mental health topic. You cannot like enroll at the University of Indiana. "Oh, I would like to get a master's degree in conversion therapy." It's like there's no such thing. You cannot get trained in that. What you may be able to do is go to Southern Baptist Seminary and get a degree maybe in biblical counseling, which covers the waterfront, about keeping women submissive and, believing that they have no value beyond their womb and all.
Yeah.
I hate this stuff that goes into that kind of stuff. But basically, what it is weaponizing the Bible to shame somebody into changing who they are. And I want to give you why it's so powerful and deadly. I want you to picture a triangle. Now, over here, you have the family and the household of this child that is unacceptable. They have a home. Over here, they've got the church group, the neighbors, the friends, the people that they see every week that they call. Maybe they have sleepovers with the kids or this stuff, or they do business with one of them that's a lawyer or whatever. But over here, you've got the church and the preacher, you know, and then you introduce this conversion therapist right at the top, who's this professional that's going to change this person. And then right in the middle, you have the target, the kid that is not allowed to be anything but a cisgender heterosexual, hardcore man or woman. all of that stereotype. And what's really awful is they all talk among themselves. Like, well, I see them at school over here. Did you know they're hanging out with this? And so it gets back, okay, you're not allowed to hang out with them. We're going to get rid of your social media, take away your phone, all this stuff. And then you've got the person up here saying, well, I think they're making some progress. They were saying this, but they mentioned something about I have a little problem with lust. And so they say, oh, their computer, let's take away their computer. and 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 then the thing where you say you've got to disown them. That is the tough love. And that comes out of the addictive drug model. When you're living with somebody who's an alcoholic or a serious drug user, and you become an enabler for that person. You're cleaning up their mess, you're calling work for them when they can't come in and all that stuff. And tough love says, no, you need to end that relationship. You cannot do that because you're enabling them to kill themselves. And so that attitude that they use towards serious substance abuse addiction, they apply to the same thing here. It's like tough love. You have got to throw them out of the house. You don't want them feeling comfortable in your presence. You don't want them feeling like you're going to take care of them. And so that's where the tough love part comes in. And you're right, there are a whole lot of people that disown and disinherit. And I'm friends with so many of them. And it's been going on for decades. And I'm like the substitute mother for a number of trans men, for example. Their parents just are hideous, and they've thrown them out, and they ridicule them, and they refuse to listen, and they're as hard-hearted as they can be, because what the neighbors think is more important than my child's happiness. Or if you're really convinced, though, that's the other thing that's really hard to unlearn is what and that's why 1946 and conversion and movies like that are really helpful, is because people honestly believe that you will burn for eternity unless you become somebody else. And that is what's really motivating them. And their whole thing is fear driven. And that whole concept of Jesus preached that the kingdom is within you. You need to go deeper. If you want to find your true purpose and you want to become in alignment with the love and the purpose of the universe, you've got to do some inner work. You have to get that alignment internally. What the church has done is made it all external. We have all the power. We will tell you how spiritual you are or are not. We will tell you how close you are to eternal joy and happiness. We're the franchise. You can't get there without coming through us. And here are all these rules and checklists. And when you look at what Constantine did, I need to remind people when you look at where the Bible came from, oh my God, this is getting to be a long
That's
conversation.
okay. That's okay.
So the Roman Empire is in serious decline. It's crumbling. It has become so large it cannot sustain itself anymore. There's a lot of corruption going on. The governors in these provinces that are expected to collect taxes and to keep the roads going, and then the centurions paid and the army presence and all of that stuff. It's crumbling because these invaders from the outside are coming in, and they're bargaining and corrupting with the governors, and they're not collecting as much tax money. And so the Roman Empire is going into decline, and it actually begins to fail in Rome, and it has to move to Istanbul, later to be named Constantinople after the Emperor Constantine. This is 325 years later after Jesus has been executed. 3 centuries, 300 years, the Roman Empire is in decline. They cannot stop this spread of Christianity, these people that are finding the kingdom within them. They're finding all these spiritual resources and reality and joy and happiness and effectiveness and love for community and neighbors and a life that is filling them up. And it's like we're trying to kill them. By some measures, Constantine, the emperor, executed over 40,000 Christians. That's how desperately they were trying to quiet this. So whenever the centurions and the Roman army moved in, Constantine was going to kill a village. He would have them confiscate all of their documents. And so I want you to think the church was dispersed from Jerusalem right after Pentecost, and we got to get them out of here. And they go northeast, south, and west. Well, you've got people. Some people knew Jesus. They were like Mary Magdalene, Lazarus. They knew Jesus. They traveled with Jesus. They know what he smells like. They know what he likes to eat. How he acts with the real poor, people with leprosy that are on they know Jesus. And then you have a bunch of people that say, know Mary and Martha. Martha's one of my good friends. Well, I know Lazarus. I've seen Lazarus before. And so they'll write a story about what they learned from Lazarus, what Lazarus told them. And then so they're going all over the world with these letters and tales of stories that people who knew Jesus or were close to Jesus or knew something about him, and they've got this letter, and they say, "Oh, well, I've got a letter that Joseph of Arimathea wrote. Would you like to see it?" "Oh, yeah, may I copy it?" And so Constantine is killing 300 years. This is going on. People making letters, copying copies of copies. They're carrying them, and you've got all of these different mindsets, like people that saw feminism and women leadership, women as equivalent in leadership and spirituality to men. There's all these different factions that are coming around. And so Constantine has collected all of these letters every time he exterminates a community. And then he convenes a council of his scholars, his hand-chosen scholars, take all of these documents and turn them into a holy Bible. I want to make a universal religion for the whole Roman Empire. We are going to turn Christianity into the religion of the empire. Constantine is the first Christian nationalist. I am going to invent a religion. And that's exactly what he does with his hand selected experts that are going through all of these documents. And oh, I like this stuff that Paul is saying, because Paul is putting men in a hierarchy and making women submissive. Wow, ooh, that fits right in with our Roman culture. I like that. Mary Magdalene, oh my God, that woman has got to go. No, there is no way she is an apostle. There is no way she is more spiritual than Peter. Stop it. We cannot have that. And so you've got this group of people that are picking and choosing what's going to go into this Bible. And it's going to serve the best interest of the Roman Empire. It is going to serve the needs. And universal, the Latin word for universal is Catholic. And so what I would need people to understand is the Bible that you have got was fabricated, was put together from copies of copies of copies of copies. And it was engineered by men that wanted to preserve the Roman hierarchy, the Roman system of control, and they wanted to infuse that. And they were going to kill every religion that didn't comply. The pagans, oh, it's like, no, you're a Druid. Nope, sorry, your time is over. You're dead now. And when you look at that, what we have is very suspect, is what I'm saying. If you're somebody that believes that that Bible is the infallible, inerrant word, God breathed every syllable in there came straight from the mouth of God. That takes more faith to believe than it deserves. It really does. And then you get the King James. Oh my God, most people don't know this. King James was a major shareholder of the Virginia Company to establish the first permanent English settlement in the New World. And he was going to establish an English colony in the New World. And so that's why we have Jamestown and the James River. They were named after King James, and he was going to colonize this new world. And most people don't know this. 80% of those colonists were dead in less than a year. Colonizing is a very risky undertaking. People are going to die. They're not going to know how to feed themselves in the new world. They're going to be exposed to diseases that they cannot treat. The weather is going to be nothing they've ever experienced before in terms of having proper clothing and shelter and the food reserves to get through it. 80% of them die. So they send another batch. This is 1607. Um, they keep dying, but they're getting more and more of a foothold. 1609, he says, I think we need a Bible. Now, King James has male lovers living in the castle with him. He has at least four male lovers, and he adds scriptures that were not in the Bible. That constantly, there's over 30 scriptures in the King James Bible that aren't in any other ones. And so when you start looking at where did this thing that claims to be the voice of God, where did that come from? It was all manufactured by monarchs. I need people to understand that. The Bible's, what we have that we call the Word of God, was produced by monarchs for the citizens of their kingdom. And so there's a lot of suspect stuff in there. And what I'm saying is for us to be imposing that kind of toxic and flawed religion on an entire nation, it's like the patriarchy, colonizer Christianity, the stuff that allows you to kill the indigenous people if they don't convert, if they don't declare Jesus their Lord and Savior today, go ahead and kill them. You know, that colonizer Christianity, women have no value except as they're in their womb. They need to stay home and stay pregnant as much as the life is possible. And when you look at all of that crap that has been embedded into us, it's like that doesn't work anymore. It's not the inerrant, infallible word of God. It is the perverse word of empire, is what it is. And you have been thoroughly indoctrinated with it. And it's time for our state legislatures to quit imposing that flawed and toxic religion on a whole nation full of people who know better. And so it's like that's where we are right now. Now I want to be sure I am not an atheist. I actually have got it on the wall. I was awarded the activist of the year by this Tri-State Freethinker Society, this big three-state group of atheists. I love them. I love them. And they love me. But I am fascinated with Jesus as a figure because once upon a time, there was a human being on this planet, one person, a teacher, and the place hasn't ever been the same since. So it's like, I am really intrigued by somebody that can pull that off as a teacher.
Yeah.
One person, place has never been the same. I'm really fascinated by somebody that can pull that off. And that's where I try to look into all of this stuff. And there's so much you have to clear away to find the truth of who that individual really was. And the message about the kingdom is within you. And what we have now is, oh, no, no, no. We have designed the kingdom we want you to be a part of. It's all out here. You can't get there without going through us. And you have to follow this hierarchy. And don't you dare think that you're equal to these men. And so it was Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And why would I allow myself to feel inferior to something these yahoos are saying? Why will I? Why should I carry that? Why would I ever give them permission to define who I am? Why would I ever consider myself inferior? And it's like, no, I am not going to carry that garbage for you. I am not. You are no more of a child of God, a human being, a citizen. I am equivalent in every respect to you in terms of a human being, a citizen, and a child of God. Don't you dare try to make me feel inferior to who you are. That will never happen. And we haven't talked about this, and I don't really want to get into it, but I am good people. I got 3 master's degrees, a doctorate. I got a perfect credit rating. I pay my taxes. I've worked all my life. I own my own home. I own my cars. I've got 4 grown children. They're all married. I've got 10 grandchildren. I have a fabulous family. They're all teachers. They're all married to teachers. I have left my mark on this city, and it is really good. I am good people, and it's so I want. That's why I do what I do, because I want people. Most people don't know a person. Most people believe what Sean Hannity or Matt Walsh told them, and it's like, oh my God, that is garbage straight from hell. Come meet me. I'm a great place to start.
I met my first trans person like 2 years ago. I was at a library and
Uh-huh.
was talking to a gentleman, and he says, "I'm a trans male." Had he not told me he was a trans male, I
They're
would have had no clue.
deceptive, aren't they?
Right, and so then I'm thinking, "Oh, it's the first trans person I've ever met." I'm really excited, but then I was like, "I think we've met others, they just didn't tell me they were trans,
Yeah,
and that's okay." You
especially
know?
trans men. They are gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, and I told my daughter, I said, "You know what? I think I would date a trans male if they had the parts I wanted. I That's not off the table," and she goes like I said, "Because the trans men I've met, they're men. Trans women I've met, they're women. I'm sorry. I've
Yeah,
met."
and and when we get into those arguments, when they define a woman,
Yeah,
what they're wanting me to do is distill everything down to reproductive
mhm,
capability. You have
okay,
you have no value. Your value as a woman is strictly defined and structured by your ability to reproduce.
but
And
at 38, I had a hysterectomy, so by that argument, is my value now gone?
well, see, that's where everything falls apart. But
Yeah,
those arguments, what's a woman?
yeah,
They see, and what they're trying to do is to get me to buy into that rigid gender binary. You're either all this or you're all that. No, I'm not. I'm clear. I am both and neither male nor female.
well, and, like, last year, I met a woman. I was at Bloomington Pride. She stopped by my booth, and she's talking to me, and she says, "I have an XXY chromosome." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh yeah, that happens
Yeah.
too.
And so then I'm like, "Wow, I don't know what an XXY chromosome is, but I'll look it up after she leaves." It's been a while since I was in a science
Oh
class,
my
okay?
God,
And
they they are women in every way. They
yeah.
have children. I mean, everything about them. They just have more testosterone than a lot of men.
Yep, and then 3 weeks later, I'm in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and a woman stops by talking to me. She's like, "I can't have children, but I've got my nieces." I was like, "Great." She goes, "I have an XXY chromosome." And I was like, "Okay, this is 2 women in less than 3 weeks. This has gotta be a little bit more common." And who's to
It
decide who they
is.
are?
That's
That
that's why they stopped chromosome testing at the
Yeah,
Olympics in the 80s, because all of these women were learning that they were XXY. They didn't know it
had no
until that
clue. Yeah,
moment, and now they're disqualified. They worked their whole lives trying to get to the Olympics, and then they find out they're XXY, and they're sent home. And
and I
so they
also what
stopped
I
doing that,
yeah.
and they're trying to start it back up now, and it's gonna fail again.
Well, and when I looked up XXY and XY and XX, they go 23 variations of the human sex chromosome that are documented at this point in time. And I was like, 23. So there's not 2, there's
Right.
23.
Well, there's more to that when you
Yeah,
start getting in. I'll tell you something else that most people don't think about. Diethyl stilbestrol was invented in the 1940s. It was a synthetic estrogen, and it was marketed to stop miscarriages. And it was a synthetic estrogen, diethylstilbestrol, called DES. And the guy that invented it, this was back in the time of Jonas Salk and all that stuff. It was going to prevent miscarriages, and he said, "I'm not going to patent this. This is going to be my gift to the world because it stops miscarriages." And so there were at least 9 different manufacturers that started manufacturing this stuff. Now, it's a synthetic estrogen, and it is the equivalent. Women who had had miscarriages that were prescribed DES were taking, I am not kidding, were taking the equivalent of 5 to 50,000 birth control pills during their pregnancy. 50,000, 100,000 grams of estrogen. I mean, most birth control pills are 2 milligrams. Okay. And it's like, what could possibly go wrong with that much synthetic estrogen in vitro? And my dad was a pharmacist. We owned a drugstore. My mom had had 3 miscarriages before I'm born. And then it's like, well, I wonder what might have happened to me. Uh, but but what I'm saying, that stuff is not biodegradable, and it showed up in the water systems now because it's urinated out. Now, and by the mid 70s, there were a whole bunch of birth defects and second generation cancers that were showing up with people who had been exposed to DES in the womb. And so that we outlawed it in the United States in the mid 70s, around 1973. And but there's all these plants manufacturing that. What they did, and all you have to do is go to any farm agriculture magazine, you'll see probably a full page ad for something called stilbestrol. It's it's synthetic estrogen you add to your livestock feed to fatten up your chickens and your cows for market. And so it's still showing up in our food supply. And that's when you hear people say, "Oh, there's no hormones in our chicken, and there's no hormones in our beef or our pork." Stilbestrol, that's still that synthetic estrogen. So what I'm saying, our environment is full of crap that most people don't have a clue about. And when you think about, oh well, this my mom took 50,000 birth control pills before she had me. What could go wrong? You
And I
know?
had a friend whose mom did do that DS
Yeah,
to
yeah,
come out,
yes, yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, your daughter will never have kids." That was one of the side effects.
Yeah,
And so Sue didn't think, and she ended up having 3 children, but the doctors were like, "There's no way your daughter's ever gonna have children."
yeah.
So,
And you don't know what's gonna happen to and the other thing was it wasn't patented, and so there's nobody to sue.
yeah.
Uh, uh, because you can't identify the source of where it came from, and so it's been very problematic to deal with it. But the the thing that I also want people to understand is that the billionaire class, let's get back to this capitalism, and overpopulation is not an accident. I need people to understand that. Overpopulation has always been a strategy, and the religion of empire, colonizer Christianity, is all about overpopulation. That all came with colonizing because you're sending these extremely vulnerable white Europeans to places like Africa and India and South America and North America. They had to procreate. The women had to stay pregnant, and they had all of this hierarchy, and so all of that stuff has been imposed and inherited, and it's run its course. It's really done a whole lot more than run its course. Most of the problems in our world, you cannot have an ever increasing GDP. We have more billionaires on this planet than in the whole history of the world, and that is unsustainable. And you cannot have an ever increasing GDP without an ever increasing population. So the whole thing right now is a big push toward heteronormative procreation. When you look at abortion laws and forcing 12-year-old girls to have babies, uh, when they with gender affirming care, you're saying, oh, a 16-year-old, they can't make a decision about who they are. They don't. But a 12-year-old girl can carry a baby, have a child for the rest of their life. It's like that is forced pregnancy.
Well,
And
they
when you
were even, what was it? I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like, "Oh, the birth rates for 16 to 19-year-olds is down, and that should be up higher." And I'm like, "What did I just hear?"
it's become like they're really concerned in South Korea. It's down over 50%. Women just do not want to have babies that are going to be raised to become their oppressors.
Yep.
And I need people to understand that. Women do not want to be raising children that are going to treat them like they are subhuman. Women are tired of that, and they're not having babies, and they don't want to be in love with men. building a marriage with men that who that's their goal in life. I wanna overpopulate, and so there's something going on, and that's what I'm just trying to get people to open up to. The days of imposing this toxic religiosity on it is holding us back. It is creating more suffering than we can handle. And overpopulation is not going to take care of itself until we start allowing people to be who they are. Not everybody is supposed to be a procreator. And to shame them and torture them and force them to be pregnant and all of these things because you have to have overpopulation, that has got to stop. That
Yes.
has got to stop now. And I
Well,
think
I've had friends who never had children, and they were like, "I don't want kids. I'd be a horrible mom."
yeah, well, that's another thing about regret rate. 1 out of 6 parents regret having children,
Yeah.
for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and I don't being I know my older sister asked my mom one time, goes, "When do I quit being a mom?" She goes, "When they put you in the ground, because it is a lifetime commitment,
Yes.
and it is not for everybody, and I don't care, and I've seen dads who were better moms than moms were.
Oh, yeah, happens all the time.
And that's okay. I mean, that's where we've gotta be able to say, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how can we work together to be a stronger team? But you
Right,
don't sit there and say, "This is your role and this is the way it should be." We don't care if you enjoy it or not.
exactly. Who said anything about joy?
What was I thinking?
Yeah, where do you think you live?
Oh my gosh. This has been great, Bobby.
Oh, well, see, I'm just so passionate and, involved in this because, the thing that breaks my heart, and I talk about Christian nationalists and conservative Christianity, they're good people. They are good people. Their faith has been hijacked.
Yeah.
And and it breaks my heart because you know how it is around here. If there's a flood or there's a tornado or wildfire comes through, you know who the first people are that are going to be at your front door with food and helping you clean up. They are good people,
Yeah.
and the goodness in them has been hijacked by this empire-driven religiosity that has really poisoned our culture and turned us into a people we don't even recognize who we are anymore. Think about people are trying to regulate love, who
Yeah.
your daughter's allowed to love. How arrogant is that? And what do they think is going to happen if your daughter falls in love with another woman? What do they think is gonna happen? It's
Yeah.
like, you know what you like, go for what you like, be happy, live long and prosper, and let me go for what I like, you know?
Well, and I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, her name's Sam, and we just talked about religion. She was raised as a Southern Baptist,
Uh-huh.
and her grandfather was a
Happens a lot
preacher.
around here.
Yep, yep, yep. And so she said, I said, "What I don't understand is when you talk about LGBTQ plus couples, people are like, 'Well, which one's the guy? Which one's the girl?'" And it's like, "Well, that's what you're missing. They don't want that, you know?"
Yes.
And so then, she said, "There's a hyper," and you mentioned it earlier, "there's a hyper focus on the sex."
Mhm.
Like, if there's a heterosexual couple, nobody goes, "Well, I wonder how they like it. I wonder what they're doing, how they do it."
When did they decide to be heterosexual? That's what
Yeah, they don't ask those, "Why did you choose to be
Mm,
heterosexual?"
yeah,
They don't ask those questions because, it's no big deal. But
yeah,
you get a same-sex couple or somebody within the LGBTQ plus community, all of a sudden, it's all about the sex. That's all
uh-huh,
they focus on, and I see a same-sex couple that communicate really well. They support each other. Some of them, divorce rate, it happens.
sure.
They're lucky enough to meet someone else, that's great. I mean, I'm divorced. I've been divorced
Well,
for
see, I'm glad you mentioned that. If marriage between a man and woman is so sanctified, why is there a 50% divorce rate?
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, come on now.
Yeah.
This is right for some, it's only right for some people. God love them. I'm a parent. I said I've got 4 grown children, they're all married. I got 10 grandchildren. Oh, Um, uh, Stuff a nuisance. Oh, um, I'm sorry about that. Um, but I guess what I'm saying is people know that marriage isn't for everybody. Raising a family is not for everybody. We should be building a world that is a glorious world for our children to grow up in. And we're not doing that.
Yeah,
This is the first generation where kids are going, I don't think I'm going to live as well as my parents. I
yeah,
don't think I'm going to be able to take the kind of vacations my family took when I was a kid. And it's we have lost sight of our world so much that we don't have a very nice place for kids to grow up anymore, and that was our job, is to make a great community for our families to grow up in so they'll be better off than we are. And see, oligarchy don't want that. It's like never-ending capitalism. I need you living paycheck to paycheck. I need you living on the fringes of poverty. And that's what's a crazy thing about capitalism is that people keep voting to impose that on themselves, like they believe I'm the reason their children can't buy a home. I'm the reason they can't get the job that they want. I'm the reason their oil is so expensive. And it's like, no, no, don't you see that's what the culture war is all about?
well, you've got, wages that are artificially held down in place,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Minimum
inflation.
wage hasn't changed for over a
Yeah,
decade. It's like, oh my God.
and so it's just like, "You've gotta be kidding me," but I know when I was working, I'm semi-retired, and, I was on the budget cut
Yeah.
every time, and they bring somebody in 20 years younger and $20,000 cheaper. That's
Yeah.
it.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
you
re-
have to
they could hire two people for
you're
what.
just you're in the budget, nothing personal, and it's a budget cut.
Right, right. We can hire 2 or 3 people for what we're paying you.
Yeah.
And, what people don't realize, see, we have we have learned to equate capitalism with freedom,
Yeah.
and we keep voting for the stuff that is ensuring our suffering.
Mhm.
When the truth of the matter, and I get it, oligarchs, they accumulate all of this wealth, and it's impressive. It's like, oh my God, I can't imagine what it would look like, what it must feel like to look at a balance sheet and go, oh my gosh, I've got almost $900 billion. I'm almost a trillionaire, and somebody's trying to take that away from me.
Yeah.
And so oligarchs, when you look at the really wealthiest people in the world, they worry about who's trying to take it away from them. And they don't realize, it's like, when is enough enough? When is there really, in terms of how your life is lived day to day, where is it where $900 billion isn't going to serve you as well as $700 billion? And it's really kind of an insanity there. But I get it. It's like they've worked so hard and they feel like, oh, they're just all of these leeches out there, the parasites trying to take my money back from me. And it's like, no, it's like you really are the parasite. You have not been paying these people. They are living in suffering because of the labor you've extracted from them without paying them a fair wage. And so, we're just asking for a little equity and fairness to come into play here. And that's really, I think, what the world is coming to grips with right now is, when is enough enough? How many trillionaires do we really need on this planet? You know? When is just being a 700 billionaire good enough for you? And we're in a time of a really great awakening right now, and y- I'm still friends with the kids I grew like that little town I grew up in. We all went to school together, kindergarten through the 12th grade, and I'm still friends with them, and I stay in touch. But it's deep in coal mining country, and some of them are rabid Trump supporters because he's promised them that coal is going to come back. The
Yeah.
old days are going to come back.
Well, and he took because I'm in a blue collar community.
Uh-huh.
And so we are the plastics at the Evansville area is known like as Silicon Valley is in California. We're the plastics, all the plastics.
Oh, yeah, all of that
Yeah.
chemical floats down the river from Pittsburgh to
Yep,
New
yep,
Orleans. Yeah.
the USS. So, we ended up with, guys I went to high school with they went to high school and they got on at the GE plastic factory in town. I mean, minimum wage at the time in high school was $3.15.
Mhm.
That's in the '80s. Well, all of a sudden, they're being hired in at 12 and $14 an hour, which was big money,
Yeah,
and then by the time they retired, they're making a six-figure.
yeah, I
And
know.
so when somebody's promising, as technology phases out that industry, because it does,
Mhm.
just like the slave owners were hanging on the slaves, but we had things that were coming in that was picking the cotton of all these people.
Right, we see that the coal mining business too.
Same thing. Yeah. Yeah. So he has been able to get off the fears of these people who are, they've just worked really hard and they earned everything they got, and, they're losing it. They can't get that six-figure income anymore or that
Right.
high five-figure income, and, so someone's promised him that he'll bring back the old ways, and he has no intention of doing that either,
Yeah. It's
so
really sad because the people that live in that part of the world, like what you're talking about, you and I grew up in a time where one person with a high school diploma could get a factory job and support a whole family, have a house in the suburbs, a nice car, go on vacation.
yep,
Mom could stay home all the time. Kids were walking to school, all this stuff. And what happened? Nobody can do that anymore.
no,
Nobody can support a family. One worker with a high school that is what happened to that?
yep.
And capitalism is what happened to that. It wasn't the LGBTQ plus
No,
community.
it
And
has never been the LGBTQ plus community dances and has a vibe that is absolutely amazing that I wish everybody could really really
yes,
get
well,
into.
yeah, it's like you can enjoy this life, you
Yeah.
really can.
I've been to pride events. I started going in 2019 when they had them in Evansville. I'd never been. My
Oh,
girls were going in Denver, so I went down there and I had on a free mom hug shirt. Hadn't written my book yet or anything. I just go down there. I'm being asked by complete strangers, "Can I have a hug?" And I'm going around just having a blast. And then last year I was at Spencer County Pride in Indiana.
mhm,
And all of a sudden, those fans that they have, the drag queens snap them.
mhm,
I hear this snap and I turn and look and there's like 20 drag queens. And this kid, he's kind of got some khakis and a button-down shirt and I kind of have a feeling he may have been like a Christian nationalist showing up at Pride and decided he was gonna preach.
uh-huh,
And they're snapping, they've got him surrounded, it's almost like he's leading a parade, and they're snapping the fans and saying, "We condemn you to leave," or "We are telling you, you have to leave this venue," and they'd snap the fans, and they
mhm,
followed that kid out, and they were all chanting that, and I had never seen it before, and then all of a sudden it was over, and everybody's back to the happy, "Let's have fun"
mhm,
scenario, but nobody got angry, nobody was shoving anybody. They handled it in the most amazing way I have ever witnessed a
mhm,
group of people handling somebody who outwardly hated them.
yeah. And you
Yeah,
know what's so awful is that that kind of joy and happiness is available to everybody. But what you see going on, especially in the Christian nationalist community, is people have chosen a gender role that they are not happy with.
yeah,
Their marriage is in trouble. They don't like the way their body looks. They wish that they had spent more time with such and such a person. They can't believe that they are going to be ostracized unless they stick with this through hell and pay off that 30-year mortgage, and then maybe one of these days we get a boat and go fishing. You know, the and when they're unhappy with the choices they've made and they don't like seeing gay people happy with the choices that fly in the face of that. And
mhm,
it's because they don't have enough courage to live what's true to them, to live according to the gifts that they have been blessed
yeah,
with. and, uh, it's I don't I just that just some people. Now there are other people like, my kids and their marriages. I I am just astonished by how good and strong they are and how the kids are turning out, and, like, 3 of my grandkids graduated from high school, and, they're driving and shaving and all this stuff, getting jobs, and and, I am so glad that I'm a parent and that I've got children and grandchildren. That's always gonna be the best thing I've got to show for my life. So I'm not knocking that, not
Right.
knocking it at all. I'm just saying that the people that are judging us are really unhappy themselves with
Yes.
the choices that they've made.
And
And
I have found when somebody says, they talk about choices that people who are homosexual or LGBTQ plus, they made a choice. And I've kind in the last couple of years come to the conclusion that that's their standpoint because at some point I think they had to make a choice.
That's true, that's true.
Yeah.
See, that's exactly right, and I'm glad you mentioned that. They made a choice.
Yeah. And they think everybody else should be able to
Yeah.
make the same
See,
choice.
and
And I had heard that from other people, and I was like, "Oh, I don't think so. I think they're just misinformed." And then this guy said something one day, and he was really adamant on choice, and then all of a sudden, like, this light bulb moment went off, like, "Holy cow. I think the other guy was right. This guy's had to make a choice."
and he thinks everybody can make a choice.
Yes.
To be unhappy as they are.
Yeah, and that makes me really sad, that somebody can't be their true authentic self, and when you really if you stop and think about back when you were 4 and 5 years old, what you liked and what you didn't like. Like, I
Uh,
like getting my hair fixed, and I like wearing dresses, and I like looking pretty, and I like that I could go out and climb a tree in the dress at the same time, you know? I liked certain things, and I liked the little boy up the street. I mean, I remember him, he had dark hair, he
yeah.
had crystal blue eyes, and I just thought he was in 1st grade, so he was a much older man than I was. Um,
Oh,
but I just thought he was an absolutely amazing human being, so much so that when he came around me, I couldn't even talk. I would just stand there and stare at him.
oh,
Yeah, my first crush.
you were in woo.
Oh my gosh, I thought he was great. And so, yeah, but and then my friends in LGBTQ, they were like, "Yeah, I thought that way, but I always liked the girl, or I always liked the boy." I was always attracted to the same sex or to this
Yeah.
person. And so it just makes me sad when you put that in context that we put so much pressure on people not to be who they truly are.
Mhm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because getting to know somebody that's gay demystifies a whole lot of stuff when you get
Yeah,
there. And it's like when you talk to them, and it was like, well, I was most interested in my brother's friends. I mean, the boys that hung around with my brother, I just really liked them, or I was really attracted to them, or I was just, I didn't want to be with anybody but my sister's girlfriends. I was always attracted to them. I didn't wanna have anything to do, you know, and when you start talking to gay people, it's that sexual preference was already there from their earliest awareness. They knew
yeah,
who they were attracted to, and that's what I was so fascinating to me about diversity. See, I don't view diversity as a curse. I view that as an essential part of evolution, and how a species evolved to be able to solve the problems it creates by its own growth.
mhm,
So whenever there's a species that finds an environment that's really conducive and productive to reproduction and all that stuff, and they start growing and populating, they're going to affect that environment. And if they're not careful, they'll affect it in ways that will prevent it from sustaining their life. And so there's all these neural diversity things that come into play to help a species evolve to solve the problems it creates by its own thriving.
mhm.
And I wish people would be okay. It's like you're not supposed to stay stuck in 1953. It's That's not a good place to stay stuck.
No, no.
Anymore.
And just where I was at, like, 20, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago, I am not that person at all.
Right.
And somebody said, "Oh, to be 18 again." I said, "Well, to be 18 and know what I know."
Uh-huh.
and somebody said something about somebody's kid, and then they go, "He's a smart ass." I said, "If I could put myself in front of my 18-year-old self, I would probably wanna slap myself into oblivion."
Oh gosh. But I'm so glad to meet you and have the conversation, and
It's
Bloomington and Owensboro is not that far apart. I used to go to, uh well, I love Brown County in
Oh,
Nashville,
I
and
love
and
Nashville and
and and I didn't notice how close it was to Bloomington for the first few years, and
yeah,
it's like, "Holy smokes, I'm this close, I gotta go check it out." And I got life is good in Bloomington, and what is that, Lake Monroe that's
yep,
between here? It's like, "Oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
real."
I love Bloomington, and then, there's International Row with a bunch of restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really good. It's really good. So
I'll bet. Well, it's I've always wanted to get to know that better. It's like I'm a big Indiana Jones fans, and whenever they go back to those
uh,
1930 views of Bloomington and IU, it's like I want to be there, but that's not there anymore.
yeah, I think it was the movie Breaking Away.
Oh yeah, the bicycles. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah, and we have
yeah.
little
Everybody got a passport after.
uh-huh, and they have the little Indy 500 up there on the weekends. They
uh,
just had it, and I think there was a shooting up there this year.
oh.
So, but yeah, yeah, Bloomington is an absolute blast of a town to go to. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, well, I need to get to know it better, and, I've just been real, thrilled to be meeting the people in Owensboro. I'm on the board of the Fairness Campaign,
Uh-huh.
and now we've been able since the '90s to get 25 cities that have a fairness ordinance to protect their LGBTQ population. And that took an awful lot of work. Owensboro does not have one of those. And I've been trying to figure out what does it take
Yeah.
to to break into that city government and that established elected control of the city to because the population is ready
Oh,
for
yeah.
this ordinance and it would be the best. I mean, the tourism, the river tourism, and that stuff is starting to pick up. And boy, if their hospitality industry, boy, if it's not attracting the LGBTQ community and making them feel safe and welcomed and good jobs and all of this stuff, I mean, Owensboro is primed to really have a rich local culture if they would just get off of that patriarchal
Yeah.
homophobic stuff they got going on right now. And I see it happening, and I'm real determined to stick with the people there in Owensboro until we have a fairness ordinance in Owensboro, because I think it's going to happen within the next year or two. I just see
I
all
think it will
the
too. Owensboro's, for most Kentucky towns, I think, pretty progressive for a small town.
Oh, I love it there, and I love the people,
Mhm.
and I'm so glad you've had Chrissy on and you're familiar with what's going on
Yeah.
there. But I think that's the thing. We live in a great place. If our silly legislators would just get out of the way.
Why don't you guys, instead of grandstanding and performing politics, actually go do politics?
Yeah, people ask me that, and I do support a lot of candidates. And actually, with the fairness campaign, I get to endorse candidates too, and so I get I get a lot of exposure and working in the trenches with them in Frankfurt, finding out really who's who and who's going to be good for what and who is two faced and all of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's a really privileged education that I've been able to get right now, but Owensboro has had a really entrenched conservative majority for a long time, and uh, they the city's outgrowing that,
Mhm.
and I'm glad you're part of the solution and everything there, uh, because th- I guess this isn't the same state it was when I moved here. It was fun and it was thriving, and Louisville, especially, was a place where the queer population could be born and grow and educated and get work and careers and have a home and a family and great health care and great mental health care, great benefits. It was a place where people are thriving, and then our General Assembly, we don't like that. We want to make that illegal.
Yeah.
They want to impose suffering, and so that's the thing that's so frustrating. It's not like we're trying to build something that's never been built before. It's like we know it works. It's like we just want to reclaim it, and I think things are moving that way. So
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean when instead of doing legislation that's gonna benefit people, they're just performing for a small, minority
yeah,
and then saying, "See, what this is what I did," because I know.
yeah. Don't Can't you see how much I love God by all this hate I've
Yeah,
had?
because Indiana the governor of Indiana on his first day wrote an executive order saying there's only 2 sexes.
Yeah.
At a press conference going, "Look, this is my first day and this is what I wrote," and I'm thinking, "Okay, we're 25 in education, we're 48 in environment in the states,
Hmm.
and we are 50 in this environment in the states, we're health-wise, we're 47 ranking, so those will go hand in hand, and so you think this executive order saying there's only 2 sexes is you're showing what you're doing on your first day? You've gotta be kidding me, and so that's when to me, that's just a performance. They didn't do anything,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it really and it's just really wrong. One of the things I do a lot of writing on is that fallacy that it's biblical that there's only 2 sexes. That just is wrong as it can be. Actually, eunuchs are mentioned in the Bible over 85 times, and the things that we have been misled about eunuchs, for instance, Joseph and Daniel and Nehemiah in the Old Testament are held up as these great heroes of the faith. Nobody ever mentioned that they were eunuchs. They were all castrated males. Um, and and that is why they excelled at the roles that they have. But and Jesus himself talks about eunuchs in Matthew 19:11 through 12. Some people are born that way. Some people were made that way by others, and some people become that way to get right with the kingdom of God. And that even right there, Jesus is saying people have agency to become, to alter their sexuality and their presentation and their roles to get into alignment with the kingdom of God. And so what I'm saying, the stuff that they are the stuff that they are claiming is bringing God back into the government. It's no, it's not. It's bringing stupidity back
yes.
into government. And it's never, no, if you really want to do that, God never pigeonholed gender, like never pigeonholed women in this reproductive role and nothing. And it's like, that is what is wrong with the world right now is you have totally missed the boat with how you have misconstrued gender and sexuality and procreation and family and all of that stuff has just been, oh God, it's just been ruined by
Mhm.
misguided men. And it's that we've done that long enough. Kind of point
Right.
to go away. So I'm preaching to the choir.
Yep. Hey, it's been good. It has been good. So, alrighty. Well, we've done this for 2 hours.
Oh my gosh. See, I was worried about that.
Don't you worry about a thing. I loved every minute of it. So
Oh,
I really appreciate this, Dr. Bobby.
oh well.
So
I'm glad to be and see, I'm just too blabby and all this stuff is just too close and I've been
yeah,
at it
but
too long.
these are the conversations we have to have to make
Yeah.
change. And if we don't have them, we cannot get this change that we need. Or I don't even know if it's a change or if it's just creating the awareness.
Hmm.
The change has always been there. Create the awareness, get the acceptance, and just move forward.
Yeah. I'm just thank you for having me on because like I said, that's really the problem. Most people have not met or known a
Yeah.
transgender person and and I'm a good place to start. If you're in that boat, come meet me. I would love to meet you. So,
Good. Well, I'll be looking for you in Owensboro.
okay.
Okay.
May
It's
31st, yeah.
Yep. But I appreciate everything, and we're gonna have to do this again, okay?
Oh, I would love to. It's been such a joy meeting you. So tell we're kindred spirit. Maybe we can go shopping in Nashville.
Hey, holler, I'll meet you there. I will meet you
Okay.
there. So,
Okay.
That's one of my favorite towns to go. I used to take my kids twice a year there, and
Oh,
there's a restaurant called Nob Hill on the corner. Have you ever eaten there?
no.
The best food ever. I
Really?
haven't been there in a couple of years.
Useful House and some other places, but I
Oh, and there's supposed to be a Bigfoot museum opening up there too.
oh, no.
Yeah, because 'cause they've got a lot of sightings up there, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'll go up there for that too."
Oh, yeah, that'll be a real crowd pleaser.
Yep, yep, yep. I don't do the woods, but I'll watch a video.
Yeah. Maybe I'll see Bigfoot in a jewelry store. I need to
There
go
we go.
visit.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Bobby, I'm gonna let you go
Okay,
and
thank you.
everything, and you take care, okay?
I will, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna hit or stop record.
Ok
There we go. Are you still there? Nope. I guess she's gone. That was fun.